What would you be willing to do to become the richest man in modern history? Most textbooks will tell you that John D. Rockefeller was a pioneer, a visionary of the American dream, a devoutly religious man who gave away half his fortune and laid the foundation for modern philanthropy. But that is just the history his money bought. Behind the schools, the hospitals, and the foundations hides a trail of destroyed businesses, ruined families, corporate espionage, and a level of business ruthlessness that made the United States government itself tremble. Today, we are going to turn off the bright light of his legacy to step into the shadows. This is the story of how John D. Rockefeller didn't just beat his competition, he annihilated it. This is the dark side of the Standard Oil empire. The year is 1865. The world has just discovered that oil isn't just good for making ointments, but for lighting up the world. Cleveland, Ohio becomes the epicenter of oil refining, and a young bookkeeper named John D. Rockefeller sees an opportunity. Rockefeller didn't want to drill for oil. He knew drilling was a gamble. He wanted to control the oil. His logic was cold and perfect. If you control the refinery, you control the final product. In 1870, he founded Standard Oil, but Rockefeller hated competition. He considered it wasteful, a sin against efficiency. So, he orchestrated what is known today as the Cleveland Massacre. In the span of just a few short weeks in 1872, Rockefeller absorbed 22 out of his 26 competitors in Cleveland. How did he do it? It wasn't with a smile. He would walk into his rivals' offices and give them an ultimatum. Sell me your refinery at the price I decide, or I will run you into bankruptcy. If they refused, Rockefeller would drop the price of kerosene in that specific area until he was taking a loss. This forced the competitor to bleed money until they went broke. Once the competition died, Rockefeller would buy up the pieces for pennies on the dollar and immediately raise prices back up. It was pure corporate extortion, and he was just getting started. But Rockefeller's deadliest weapon wasn't oil. It was the railroads. To transport his product, he relied on trains. And this is where his morality completely vanishes. Rockefeller created a secret alliance, a shadow cartel called the South Improvement Company. The deal was diabolical. Rockefeller guaranteed the major railroad companies a massive and constant volume of shipments. In exchange, the trains gave him a gigantic discount, known as a rebate. But that wasn't all. Rockefeller demanded a drawback clause. This meant that every time a competitor of Rockefeller used those trains, the railroad would charge the competitor the full rate and secretly send a portion of that money directly back to Rockefeller. His competitors were unknowingly funding the Standard Oil empire. Rockefeller was using his rivals' own money to destroy them. When this secret scheme came to light, there were riots. Independent oil drillers marched, sabotaged train tracks, and burned oil. Rockefeller was labeled the most hated man in Pennsylvania. His reaction? He locked himself in his office, ignored the press, and continued buying up desperate companies amidst the chaos. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled 90% of oil refining in the entire United States. It was an absolute monopoly, but maintaining an empire of that size required mob-style tactics. Rockefeller set up a nationwide espionage network. He bribed the employees of his rivals so they would send him coded telegrams reporting on the competition's movements. He knew who they bought from, who they sold to, and exactly how much they charged. If a competitor managed to survive, Rockefeller applied a scorched earth tactic. He created phantom companies which pretended to be independent, but actually belonged to Standard Oil, just to steal their customers by offering impossibly low prices. The government tried to stop him. State laws said that a company from one state could not own shares of a company in another state. What did Rockefeller do? His lawyers invented a masterful and wicked legal trick: the trust. They handed over the shares of dozens of companies to a small board of trustees led by Rockefeller. On paper, they were separate businesses. In reality, it was a single, multi-headed monster that controlled the economy. Rockefeller believed he was touched by God. He literally said once, "God gave me my money." To him, crushing the weak was simply applying Darwin's law of evolution to business. Even though Rockefeller retired in the late 19th century to dedicate himself to giving his money away, his business philosophy stained with cruelty was inherited by his son and the companies they controlled. The darkest point came in 1914 in Colorado. The Rockefeller family was the main shareholder of a massive mining company. The coal miners, who lived in conditions of modern slavery in company-controlled towns, went on strike demanding fair pay. The company evicted them from their homes in the middle of winter. The mining families set up a tent colony in a town called Ludlow on April 20th, 1914. The Colorado National Guard, heavily influenced and funded by the Rockefeller Company, opened fire on the camp with machine guns and set it ablaze. Around 21 people died, among them 2 women and 11 children, who had hidden in a pit beneath a tent to escape the bullets, only to suffocate to death from the smoke. The Ludlow Massacre stained the Rockefeller name with innocent blood. Even though Rockefeller Sr. was no longer running the day-to-day operations, the ruthless system of power that he built was the one that pulled the trigger. Rockefeller's empire finally met its greatest enemy. It wasn't a government or a businessman. It was a journalist. Her name was Ida Tarbell. Her father had been one of the small oilmen ruined by Rockefeller. Tarbell dedicated years to unearthing the secret, documents, and dirty tactics of Standard Oil. Her series of articles exposed the monster to the public light. The outrage was massive. Finally, in 1911, the United States Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly and ordered its dissolution into 34 separate companies. Companies you know today as Exxon, Mobil, or Chevron. And what happened to Rockefeller, the man punished by the law? Ironically, the sum of the parts was worth more than the whole. When the company was divided, the stock of those 34 new companies skyrocketed on the market. The government's punishment turned John D. Rockefeller into the first billionaire in American history. His fortune reached nearly 2% of the entire nation's economy. If we adjust that for inflation today, it would make Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos look like absolute beginners. John D. Rockefeller spent the last half of his life trying to buy his way into heaven. He donated over $500 million to medicine, education, and science. He eradicated diseases and founded universities, but make no mistake, that philanthropic greatness was built upon the bones of hundreds of crushed competitors, rigged markets, and a corporate cruelty that changed the laws of the world forever. Rockefeller didn't just win the game of capitalism. He hacked the rules, trampled the players, and when there was no one else left on the board, he bought the entire board. Was he a business genius or a corporate criminal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of history, subscribe and hit the bell. I'll see you in the next video.